So these are the top, in a survey of America, these are the primary number one sources that people report that are stressful. Work, parenting, personal relationships, caregiving, and health. None of those are that surprising. But what do all these have in common? All of these things are really important, right? They're all really meaningful things. These are all things that we care about. We care about our jobs. We care about, if we're parents, being a good parent, and we care about our kids. Personal relationships are important to us. If we have to care for somebody that we love and our health. These are really meaningful things. These are not trivial things to us. So I suppose if we wanted a stress-free life, quit your job or ask for a demotion where it's incredibly easy. Don't have kids if you don't have kids yet. If you do, maybe give them to someone else to raise. I've had those moments. I've got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. Stop caring about your health, and there you go. But that's not what we want to do, because these are the things that add meaning to our lives. So stress and meaning go hand in hand. This is a really important concept and idea. If we're stressed, it's because there's something important to us that's happening. If there's something really meaningful, then there's going to be stress associated with it. That's just how it goes. Stress and meaning are linked. We can't separate them. Unfortunately, sometimes we try to avoid stress. And we avoid situations. I had an artist come to my backyard and just draw a picture of me and my wife and my family. Just kidding. But here's the thing, when we talk about stress and meaning, it sounds great and it's easier said than done, right? At the end of the day, this is really hard to do when we're in the moment, when we're in it. When we avoid stress, and we all have our strategies for avoidance, let's be honest, all of us do, I do, you do. It's because it's really uncomfortable and it's really hard. Feeling that knot in my stomach, feeling those worrying thoughts which trigger that whole stress response, right? Like, this is going to be horrible, I can't handle this. This is going to cause a lot of problems to someone I care about or to me or my future. I'm not good enough, a lot of self-doubts. All that kind of thinking triggers that stress response. And it can keep it going long after that initial stressor is actually gone. We can maintain that. And then that cortisol level can really stay up there. And that's where chronic stress comes from. So avoidance is something that's really important to kind of look at. Because we all do it and it just doesn't work. In fact, there was an interesting study on avoidance by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And they surveyed 1,000 adults over 10 years. This was a really comprehensive study. At the beginning of the study, they asked them how they cope with stress. And what they found was the people who said, those who said that they avoided stress as a coping strategy, by the end of the study, had significantly higher rates of depression, had more experiences of conflict at work, conflict at home. They had more negative outcomes overall. So avoiding stress, while it's a short-term fix, it leads to long-term problems. It doesn't work for us. But it really is, it's a vicious cycle, is what it is. These aren't, it can kind of sound like, well, don't avoid stress. What are you thinking? Like, of course, but again, if we're really honest with ourselves, what happens is when we avoid this, we get into a downward cycle really quickly, right? So I avoid stress. So let's say I go into my man cave, or I go watch a game, or I go zone out online, right? Because I don't want to deal with whatever that stressful thing is. Well, what happens to that stressful thing? It gets bigger, right? It amps up. Eventually, I got to come back to it. Well, now it's even harder, right? So now I'm going to avoid it even more, right? And now I'm going to find other strategies to avoid it. And that can continue and continue. And then before you know it, is just this cycle and this spiral that's been going down for a while, and it's really hard to start turning it the other direction. I'll tell you, I've been a therapist for about 15 years, and in that time I've seen a whole spectrum of folks. I started out spending all my time in community mental health with people who have some histories of chronic abuse and trauma. They have difficulty, there's zero education or very minimal education. There's a lot of talk about chronic stress. You can see it in terms of just their ability to function and cope and learn, and just these wonderful hearts who are wanting help, but they've been doing this thing, this downward spiral, which might look like alcohol, it might look like drugs, it might look like just withdrawing from the world and not being able to work or keep a job. And then I also see, and I see this more now in my practice, I see executives, I see CEOs, I see business owners who are these incredibly dynamic problem solvers, who can have these insane, productive, high-powered, high-stakes meetings and are incredibly successful and elite in their field. And yet, they come to see me because there's stress at home that's chronic, that they haven't been dealing with, that they've been avoiding. And they're in tears. And they're like puddles on my couch, feeling helpless because they don't know what to do. They can't solve this problem. And it's very similar in terms of the themes. At the end of the day, there's these two groups, and everyone in between, there's this fundamental pattern of avoidance and feeling helpless and not knowing what to do. So I want to give you guys a framework a little bit of a way to think about stress and your individual stress, our individual stress, and how we grow from it.